Welcome to the December 2nd meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents. It's 1:05 in the afternoon, and we'll begin the meeting. I don't see that Lois is here yet, but we have 22 participants, and I would deem it as a quorum, so that we can continue. So let me just put the agenda up and share my screen. I hope that's the agenda. So we have the approval of the minutes of the November 18th meeting, which I sent to everybody as an email attachment last night and has been up on the Board of Regents site as well. But I can shift back to that and share it quickly. And here it is. I'll go to the second page. Are there any modifications or changes to the minutes of the November 18th meeting? Now, remember, we had actually two meetings on November the 18th. We had the joint meeting with the Board of Regents, and those minutes are being done separately. Pam, if you're still here, could you tell me what the status of those minutes are? Well, I'll get back to
Sorry, I was muted. They are still being written.
Okay.
I took some vacation time, so I'm a little bit behind, but they should be up on Monday.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. And you have the ones, these. So these are just the minutes of the Faculty Advisory Committee, only part of the November 18th minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? I can't see anybody, but I assume someone has. Yes, Kalina. Is there any opposition to the minutes? If not, we'll deem them having been adopted. Okay. Secondly, we need to go to the agenda for today, and I'll share that as well. It'll take me just again 1 second. I don't think that's it, is it?
We can see
Sorry.
it. Yeah.
Can you see the agenda? Okay.
Make it a little bit
There's just one modification, an amendment to it to allow for as item 2B, a discussion with the CSCU library staff who are here present. So I'll just entertain a motion to amend the minutes to include item 2B, CSCU library presentation.
I'll move that, Mary Beth.
Okay, Mary Beth, thank you. Any objections to that? If not, let's go ahead. I don't know if those folks need to do a presentation. Let me just stop this.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have a brief slide deck which I'll share in a moment.
Oh, okay, I think I'm going to have to somehow make you a presenter.
Okay. Well, let me just try here. I think it may let me share.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Patrick. Go ahead.
Sure. So hi everyone. My name is Patrick Carr, and I'm the CSU Program Manager for Library Consortium Operations. In this role, which I've held since 2019, I work in the System Office in the area of academic and student affairs under the leadership of Provost Katoria. I'm joined today by Carl Antonucci, who is the Director of Library Services at Central, and Debbie Herman, who is the Library and Educational Technology Library Director at Manchester. And we're here to talk about the work of the CSCU Library Consortium. In my view, there are two important premises for our participation in today's meeting. First, that the CSU libraries and their partnership through the consortium are critical to advancing the work of faculty. And second, that the libraries in the consortium will be strengthened by the input of this committee. So following a brief presentation, Debbie, Carl, and I look forward to addressing comments and questions. First, we wanted to explain what is the CSU Library Consortium. Essentially, this consortium includes all of the libraries in the CSU system along with the Connecticut State Library. And as you see here, our mission is to empower library collaboration in support of success, equity, diversity, social justice, and access to resources that spark creativity and intellectual enrichment. The consortium has further established 4 core strategic directions that guide our work in carrying out this mission, and they are breaking down barriers, partnering for success, coordinating collections, empowering discovery, and advocacy through assessment. Those strategic directions are described in a bit more detail on the consortium's website, and in a moment I'll put a link to the website in chat if you want to learn more. But now I'm going to turn the floor over to Debbie Herman, who is going to discuss how we collaborate.
Good afternoon. Our consortium is led by a council of library directors composed of representatives from each CSCU institutions, typically the director of the library, Patrick Carr, and the state librarian, Deborah Shander. So we're somewhat unique in that regard relative to other councils in the system. An executive committee whose membership includes the program manager, the state librarian, 1 elected community college representative, and 1 university representative, sets the meeting agenda and acts on any business that is referred to it by the council. But the true engine that propels our work is the library staff from across the consortium who volunteer their time to serve on 1 or more of 6 teams. Affinity or interest groups exist to foster information sharing and connections among library colleagues on a more informal basis. Finally, our work is guided and supported by 2 full-time staff, Dr. Patrick Carr, our program manager, and Travis Feder, the CSCU systems librarian, both of whom are based in the system office. It is worth noting that both positions were initially proposed and strongly advocated for by the council in order to build on the success of our shared library system implementation and to advance our collaboration. Next slide, Patrick. The consortium's newest and arguably most active team is the DEI and social justice team, which was created in 2021. A recommended diverse, equitable, inclusive collection statement was developed by this team and endorsed by our council in May 2022. It acknowledges the long-standing systemic biases and structural inequities that have shaped library collections and affirms the goal of curating equitable and inclusive services in the service of our diverse learning community. This team has also developed suggested best practices for CSU libraries concerning the application of registration and transcript holds, which have been shown to disproportionately harm students of color and first-generation students. The team also submitted a proposal to the CSCU senior leadership to join the Association of College and Research Libraries Diversity Alliance. This is a national program that is intended to increase the pipeline of individuals from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups in the LIS field by offering paid practica and fellowships. Next slide, please. The backbone of our consortium is the shared technological infrastructure, the platforms that make library services accessible to our students, faculty, and staff 24/7. They include the Ex Libris Alma library management platform and the Primo Research Discovery Service that went live in 2017. The implementation of Alma Primo made it possible for faculty to initiate requests for materials held in libraries across the CSCU institutions with the click of a button. The university libraries have also implemented Rapid ILL, which is another Ex Libris product, which has resulted in expedited delivery of interlibrary loan requests. Through Alma Primo, we've also extended our resource sharing network beyond the CSCU consortium libraries, which Carl will discuss in the next slide.
And I'm going to give you a brief timeline on how this benefits our faculty and students across the system. In 2017, as Debbie mentioned, Alma Primo was implemented, and faculty, students, and staff were then able to use Alma Primo to directly request physical collections held by any other CSCU institution libraries, as well as the Connecticut State Library. In 2019, we upgraded to an automated fulfillment network, which made this more robust and automated for this physical collection resource sharing. 2020, we began an innovative partnership with the SUNY library system, which also uses Alma Primo. We worked on a project to test configuration of those systems to allow for article resource sharing. And in 2022, the article resource sharing enabled at all the CSCU institutions. This means for us that the CSCU faculty, students, and staff can now place requests from Primo for articles that are not accessible to them through their home library. The request is sent to other CSCU libraries for fulfillment. If we cannot fulfill it within our own system, the item goes to external partners, SUNY libraries, and now Brandeis University, which we're very excited about. And some of the largest schools that we're working with in the SUNY system are the University of Buffalo, SUNY Old Westbury, Empire State College, and Westchester Community College, among some of them that we're working with. The faculty member, a student, or staff member who placed a request receives an email with a link to the article. And this puts all the riches of the library's article collections, as well as the collections of SUNY libraries in Brandeis, within more easy reach for our students. And eventually this saves us money and time. In 2022-23, we're working to develop a pilot for physical resource sharing of actual books with the SUNY system. And again, as Debbie mentioned, that Rapid ILL, the 4 CSUs have been using it, and it cut down our time. Before we started this, we started in the pandemic. It took an average of 3.5 days to fill an article request. Now in 2021, we actually had a turnaround time of 1.75 days, and we have a 97% fill rate. If we can't get it from Rapid, we get it from others, but we do it within a day. Our Assistant Vice President for Planning Institutional Effectiveness asked the other day for an article, and with the next morning, she asked for 8 o'clock on November 17th, November 18th, the article was delivered through Rapid ILL. So it's really a fast and great service. So that's just a little bit about our resource sharing that is enabled through this great partnership with our consortium. Next slide. And I'll have Debbie introduce this slide.
Thanks, Carl. So over the years, the State University Libraries engaged in some joint negotiation and licensing of subscriptions as a group, and to a lesser extent, the community colleges did as well. But given reductions to collection budgets across the system, our consortium has been a lot more intentional about this practice by leveraging its size to negotiate favorable pricing and terms for all CSCU institutions. In one recent example, the CSU Library Consortium partnered with UConn to extend its negotiating power. We listed a few examples on the slide that Carl will review in a little more detail.
Yes, we ended up doing some joint purchasing. Our committees got together and we decided that we would do a joint purchase of the Scopus product. As some of the CCSU faculty here know, we've had that at CCSU, but we negotiated together on that, and this is the largest abstract and citation database of peer-reviewed literature, scientific journals, books, and conference proceedings from Elsevier. Now we have we've negotiated a deal with Elsevier, not only that the 4 CSUs have it, but also it's extended to the community colleges. And on the local level, that saves us money, so that way we can use the money here at Central, for example, to buy things that our individual faculty requests here for our students here at Central, and the system office pays for that. We also have a deal that we are partnering with UConn, and it provides a degrader ebook collections to both the CSUs, the community colleges, and UConn uses it, and it's complete ebooks of Harvard University Press, 2000 to 2022, and we have the 2022 Harvard University Press ebooks as well. University of Chicago Press from 2017 to 2022, Vervet from 1979 to 2022, and Yale University Press from 2016 to 2022, and they're complete full text ebooks that can be used by all of our students in the consortium. And we partner with UConn, and we got a great deal on this, and it's here for our students on the basis of our collaboration. And I'll let Debbie go over films. I'll ask Debbie go on Films on Demand, because I know they use it at the community colleges.
Yeah, Films on Demand is a collection of documentary videos, and I believe that most of our member institutions have a subscription. Early on, that was one of our first successes in engaging in joint negotiation. At that time, we were able to typically e-resource subscriptions go up a minimum of 3% a year, all the way up to 10 or 15%, and we were able to hold the current year's pricing for 2 years. So I think that alone yielded about $10,000 worth of savings. So we've really built on that success. We've added more institutions. It's been very successful. On the back end, what's been exciting about it is with our Alma Primo system, we have a shared repository of bibliographic records, so that rather than each institution loading and doing all the cataloging and maintaining those records in their individual catalogs, we have a shared network zone. So for the community colleges, that has been a game changer, because we just really don't have the staff to provide that level of maintenance. And I would argue that the state universities have suffered their share of staff reductions as well. So by sharing the load and the maintenance of those records, we then give access to those collections through our Primo Discovery service to all of our students at all 17 institutions.
In the last subscription that we worked jointly on is a joint subscription for the whole a consortium for the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I'll turn it over back to Patrick for any.
Those are our prepared remarks. At this point, we would really welcome and value any comments, feedback, suggestions, ideas that this committee would have about the libraries, library services, or the work of the consortium.
I'm trying to see, could you actually take down, yeah, so I can actually see if people are putting up their hands. Thanks. Well, I do have a question to start off with. What's the relationship between the various interlibrary loan functions that you've described and WorldCat and Iliad? Because I guess I'm old-fashioned, and actually some of what you said today is new to me, and I sort of prize myself as something of a library user. But I've been using WorldCat through and Iliad.
Well, here, Dr. Blitz, we still use Iliad as well, but we'll just do it through the rapid ILL to make it quicker, and you shouldn't see, it's transparent. So we still maintain here at Central the Iliad function and through WorldCat. So you're not going to see any interruption in service. This rapid service just made it all the quicker in some cases to enable you to get the resources as fast as we can.
And secondly, when you talked about the Harvard, Yale, University of Chicago ebooks, are those all available through one source, or does you have to look for them book by book?
No, don't we, Patrick? We have a interface for that, and then it brings the individual books up so you can look at them.
Okay.
That's correct, Carl. There is a single platform on which all those ebooks can be accessed, but you can also search for them on a individual ebook title by title level within Primo, which is the collection discovery interface that you can get to through any of the websites of the CSU libraries.
And I would say that's yet another example of our shared cataloging. So individual, they're not cataloged 17 times. They're cataloged once and then made available to the 17 for discovery in their local catalogs.
Let me continue one more question. Well, and I think this may be something that other people have noticed as well. The students tend to go directly to Google for searching for sources, right? And their use of our library databases and ebooks and so forth is, I think, fairly limited relative to that. And it would be nice to have, maybe a little pamphlet or something like that that we could distribute along with our syllabi so that students would have a very quick overview of things they could get immediately. We've got some further questions, but that's just a suggestion. Mary Beth, why don't you go first and then Jennifer?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say that I found that very informative. I found a lot of information that I didn't know, so I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciated hearing about all of the work that the library is doing in the area of DEI. So I thought that was really forward thinking, and I'm really happy to hear that.
Jen, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think the presentation was great also. I just wanted to not correct you, David, but just clarify that in the English classes, we spend a tremendous amount of time teaching students how to use the databases. And I would argue that many of them do go there before Google, and that librarians are great about creating libguides and stuff too. So on the community college side, I think we take full advantage of them. I just wanted to throw that in as an English teacher. Thanks.
I seem to have made an applied criticism I didn't intend to do. That's fine. Let me say that I'm a big fan of the historical New York Times. That is my favorite database, and I recommend it to students, any of them who are working in history of ideas or in anything 19th and 20th century, to get a view of what the journal of record or the newspaper of record had to say. And it's quite a useful source. That's just one of so many different databases. Are there any other questions? If not, I want to thank the presenters. I think it sort of encourages us all to go and do a little bit more propaganda, particularly for the online resources. I know that, over time, the actual physical book resources have not been able probably to keep up with the vast output. But when you look at the availability of ebooks and those online databases, that's really quite significant. So perhaps we can have an update, next year as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your
Thank
meeting.
you, everyone.
Okay. So let's proceed now to item 3, which is reports of chair and co-chair. Actually, most of what I have to say is contained in the resolution in support of Western Connecticut State University Social Sciences and Meteorology. So I'm going to, there has not been a meeting of the Finance Committee this month. And I think we haven't yet had a follow-up to the discussion on full funding for public higher education. So I'm going to bring that up again with Chair Ryan. and with CFO Ben Barnes, because one of the things that we want to do is to have a better understanding of the historical evolution of state funding for the expenditures for the costs of the institutions, the colleges, the universities, and Charter Oak, and we don't quite have that yet, because that would enable us to indicate, for example, an objective to which we would wish to restore funding, because we know it's been declining over time in percentage terms. So that's something still to follow up on, and bear in mind the calculated or projected deficit in the $100 million range, which will be a subject of further discussion, obviously, between the system office, the legislature, and the governor. But part of that is the salary increases and the fringe benefit increases. And we know that the governor, and for that matter, I think the legislature, have at least informally committed themselves to covering those. But then the further losses due to decline of enrollment, that's an issue to which we have to return. So I don't have all that much to say. There was a vision statement from the system office for CSCU, which was reported in the papers. I think some people may have seen this. It was drawn to my attention only yesterday. I've barely had time to look at this. Like many vision statements, it is rather abstract and more symbolic than real, although we will have to sort of get our minds into or around what is meant by systemness, which is a brand new concept, or at least new word as far as I'm concerned. So we'll return to that at a later date. That may have been discussed at the ASA committee.
Yeah,
So why don't I pass on to you now then?
right. Yeah, so we had our ASA meeting this morning, and it began with a joint meeting of the HR and ASA committees for the purpose of receiving the sexual misconduct report for the state, for the system. And I will give you just the top number and direct you, I guess. And I have the report in front of me, so if you have questions, I can probably grab some of those numbers now if you want to discuss. But the full presentation is in the video for this morning's meeting, right at the beginning of the ASA meeting, if you want to hear more of the details. So Angelo Simoni gave us sort of the numbers, the breakdowns by campuses, and then highlighted a lot of the resources, et cetera, for the regions to understand what our community partnerships were in terms of support for students, et cetera. The big numbers are these. Student reports at the CSUs. There were 43 reports of sexual assault in 2021, 5 reports of stalking, 14 intimate partner violence instances. There were no reports at the community colleges and none at Charter Oak. So there are some breakdowns if you want to know like which numbers went to which campuses, but like I said, the details and also the links to the more detailed reports were also shared, and you can find them like on the higher ed, CGA higher ed, and on our website. Is there anything we want to discuss on that?
Could I just ask a clarification? Would the difference between the fact that there are double-digit reports from the CSUs, but none from the community colleges, be a function of the fact that the CSUs have residences and the community colleges don't, and that any complaints perhaps at the community college level would have gone to local authorities?
Most likely. I mean, there was little discussion of it. It did come up. There was a question, but not, it's hard to tell why, but yeah, most likely, right? Okay. Then there was discussion of the strategic or presentation of an approval of the strategic vision. So the established mission statement that had been approved by the board has not changed, but the specific vision statements and goals under that vision statement have changed. And I'm just going to share for just a second so we can get a sense of what that looks like. Give me while I shuffle screens. This seems right. Yes. Okay, so you can all see that. So this is the current mission already approved. That has not changed, but the goals under this have changed. So the first is student success. And then there are 3 bullets under there. I'll give you a moment to glance at them. Is it big enough for everyone to see? Oop, that went way too big, sorry. Got out of hand. There we go. So it's improve access, improve retention, and research and understand and address the opportunity gaps. Then there's yeah.
Helena, can you step it up just one step? You had
Sure.
one. Yeah, that's great.
How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then I'll scroll down to goal 2, innovation and economic growth. As to ensure certificate and degree programs are contributing to the creation of knowledge and the economic growth of the state of Connecticut and preparing students for careers today and in the future. Involves a master plan, expand and track and access external partnerships, expand scholarship and research resources. Moving down, affordability and sustainability. I think I can get all of these on here. Okay. Ensure the CSCU is making attendance affordable and our institutions financially sustainable. Develop and implement a master plan. Utilize a return on investment model for programs and initiatives, and from a student and institution perspective, and work to mitigate the cost of attendance. And then there's the systemness. Realize the full potential of CSCU system and our collective efforts to meet student needs while promoting civic responsibility, public service, community engagement, and social justice as core CSCU values. Okay. All right, I think it's worth looking at. I think, like you say, David, a lot of these things are so general, it's hard to say what they really mean. 2 things that of the things that could be mentioned, I mentioned 2. One is just that the social justice goal doesn't seem to have a lot of connection to the bullets under it. Like, it's not clear what's meant by social justice for our system. Alice Pritchard has said that she's going to maybe flesh that out a little bit, because it is a need of being fleshed out. I'm not sure what it is. The other was that though the mission statement mentions an emphasis on providing liberal arts education, there isn't a lot of detail in the actual goals of how that might be achieved. And I think in particular, and it doesn't have to be understood this way, but on just a first glance, this idea of the return on investment model seems to be at odds with the prioritizing of making sure that there's a liberal arts education across the state. So those 2 things came up. The response was mostly just that while those sentiments are real, they perhaps weren't expressed as clearly as they should be in this document. But yeah, go ahead, Mary Beth.
I apologize. So I think you probably started off with this, but can you just describe, so who made these, where did these changes begin? Who made these changes?
So let's see if I can, it was made over the summer. Let me see if I can see exactly who the group of people, it actually doesn't say exactly who was involved in getting this done. The explanation was simply that it hasn't been updated since 2012, and that going into President Chang's 2nd year of leadership, it seemed like it was in need of being revamped. But there was no mention of who exactly collaborated on this. The effort seemed to be one of reflecting the strategic plans of the various institutions and sort of collecting, the content of those in a larger vision. There was also an effort. The idea is that while equity goals are not listed as a standalone item, they're supposed to be embedded in all of the goals listed. I'll reach out and find out who was actually involved in putting them together, though. David?
Yeah, this came up at our open meeting of faculty. I don't know if Mark Jackson, you were able to be there as well. But at any rate, I got put on the spot by the president of the university who said, "Where does this come from?" And I had only been informed of it that morning because one of the members of the steering committee of the University Senate had noticed the article, which appears in the Hartford Business Journal. CSCU Board of Regents is set to adopt a new 2030 strategic vision. I think it should be obvious that it would have been a good idea had they, consulted with us and provided us with an advanced copy of this, because I think we could have actually improved it. I think I agree with you, Kalina. The fourth point on systemness, which is a brand new word, actually. And I'll come back to that in a second, but the bullet points don't seem to be amplifying or explaining or itemizing what is meant by systemness, or for that matter, the description, which is really about equity, justice, diversity, and inclusion. So that certainly could have been improved with just a minor consultation with a group of, as it turns out, 21 people here who might have helped to improve that. But I'm going to assume this was done by folks at the system office, some task force or working group or other. We'll comment on it at the next board meeting because it'll obviously come up for approval. For your interest, the term systemness was apparently invented by Nancy Zimpher, the former chancellor of the State University of New York, in 2012. So it's a brand new term. Right?
Cutting edge.
Cutting edge, yes. But in fact, I'm not sure that it actually is all that particularly helpful, although it must be part of the lingo of senior administrators at public universities that we just hadn't caught on to up to now. I would suggest that they should use the term system of systems. That really what CSCU is a system, but it is not a single system of all parts, integrated into one, but rather, as stated in Section 185 of the statutes, 3 component parts: the community technical college system, which presumably after July 1st will be merged into a single institution, Charter Oak State College, and the 4 CSUs. So there is a big difference. And I'm not going to belabor the point now, but in system theory, there is a huge difference between a system and a system of systems. And I may be heading in the direction of a small lecture on this point at the next board meeting. So if anybody wants to stop me, now is the time to do it.
Well, no, I think what you're highlighting here is that while that seems to sort of be a general placeholder, it is actually making a statement, and it's making a statement, I think, that is not consistent with your vision here, right? Because if you look at what it is, it appears to be an effort to establish a single identity across the system, as if we are taking on our sort of moral, it's sort of personhood for the system itself, and that our effect on the community as a whole is being, like, that's the only way that I can understand this as meaningful, because it's a weird little collection of things. And when I asked about it, the answer I got was it was about marketing ourselves as like places that prioritize things like social justice, because the sort of constituent institutions all say something about social justice in their strategic plans. The question is still what it means and I'm not sure what it means, but it does seem like this is an attempt to create a sort of identity that, and it is sort of about our sort of outward facing, public facing image. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, that is helpful. In even in systems point of view, there is obviously some identity of the overall system, but there's also autonomy and a degree of independence of the constituent units. So rather than being component parts of a single system, in systems of systems, you have constituent units, and there's a big difference between component parts and constituent units. And I think we'll just have to come back and discuss that a bit more, both with the board and among ourselves as well.
yeah, and I actually think that including some expression of that in these bullets is also a way to get at the social justice thing, because it's also a way to make sure that each constituent is adequately funded, regarded, their missions are achieved, right? And we see that sometimes that doesn't quite get done. Cool. Okay, that's more thought than I thought I'd put into a mission statement, but moving on.
Vision statement. Vision statement.
Oh, vision statement, that's right. Not a mission.
And there is a vocabulary that's a little closer maybe to something that's retrievable. The idea is that it's a system with semi-autonomous units. I mean, and the problem is that people probably won't like that idea because it sounds like there's renegades among us, but semi-autonomous is a fundamental idea in legal anthropology. I'm talking about large systems where there are fields that are connected to the system, but are semi-autonomous in various ways.
That's a good point.
Thanks. Okay, so next there was an interesting, a more lively than usual discussion concerning the appointment of a Martin Geitz, I hope I'm saying his name right, as an endowed chair at Central Business. One of the interesting aspects of this is that this is a person with a really impressive business resume. He's been a banker since 1981, and the regents were actually a little baffled by the fact that someone with such an impressive resume would be appointed at the level of assistant professor. And really thought that probably should be tweaked for the purposes of, among those goals that we just looked at, it was about partnerships and so on. We want to be able to recruit practitioners who are senior in their field and to recruit them at a level that is not senior, as a senior sort of person in our field seemed to be a bit disrespectful of the level of expertise they brought to the position. One of the things that was highlighted, though, and I really appreciated this, is that this wonderful resume is supported by a bachelor's in German literature and political science, once again emphasizing the fact that a liberal arts education really is a powerful thing. So that was a nice conversation to have, and also just an interesting sort of debate where regents were sort of pushing back on, what are our needs and why are we doing this way? Okay. Yeah.
Just one point. Yeah, the appointment, as I understand it, as a part-time assistant professor for a period of 2 years, renewable yearly afterwards at CCSU's discretion. Right. So this is not a tenure track position.
It is not.
Right, and it's somewhat similar to the so-called to what a position is. There is something called the distinguished professor, which is available to external individuals who have made a significant contribution in their field, economics or politics or culture, who are brought on board with that title, and at the same time they have technically the status of adjunct faculty. The only difference here is that the person is being also considered as an adjunct assistant professor.
Right.
I know I went through all this when I brought on Ned Lamont in 2007. So I'm well familiar with some of the intricacies of this little business.
So I think that's a conversation that they're going to revisit. They think that it seems that like titles will matter in terms of the kind of honor you bestow on experienced practitioners, and they plan to have another conversation about that at some point.
So it was a problem that they were not using the distinguished professor title?
They just thought assistant professor was just beneath his level of experience.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So Ron?
Perhaps you could get them to consider the title of instructor as beneath the status of community college folks who enter with a PhD or even a master's degree.
This is true. This is true. And when I say they, it was brought up by at least two regents were really puzzled by this, and it was reserved by another for another conversation. So, but yes, absolutely.
So they didn't approve it.
They did approve it.
They did approve it, but they want to return to the title.
They want to kind of just review it for the future, also in the interest of being able to recruit more, people like this.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think there's a long history of the use of the term distinguished professor for exactly this reason. Because if you invoke assistant professor, you're invoking a ranking system which you've just entered, and that's not what we're asking here. This is a distinguished. At Western, we have a distinguished position that came with the Macrocostas family gave us an endowment for a visiting professor, but obviously distinguished professor is above a visiting professor or whatever. But I think that the great idea about a distinguished professor is that nobody would quibble that it is not an honor to hold it. There's a distinction inherent in the title, and yet it clearly is not part of the ranking system. It's a different sense of presence.
Again, Rob, had they actually inquired of us, we could have told them, but they seem not to have any memory from before 2011. You and I are familiar with this at the university level, and I don't know exactly why it was done this way, but what you propose is exactly what should have been done.
Well, no, it actually, I believe, originated at Central.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But they also don't remember before 2011.
Gotcha.
Sometimes. We need some historians to actually write the history of the CSUs, the community colleges, the mergers of the two systems, the consolidation, and so forth. Perhaps some faculty member with gray hair, when he or she retires, can do that.
All right. So the project of that began with our resolution on refugees, etc. I forget what other asylees, right? Is still moving ahead, being taken really seriously, and right now Dr. Kathuria is talking with the ESL Council to see what they can come up with and what actual investments can be made, because they're seeing certain obstacles for students where it is about covering their costs at a certain point. So they're actually looking to make investment that will facilitate students who want to enroll and get into the ESL classes and so on. So it's really nice to see that progressing. It's really impressive to see the amount of work that has to be done to sort of like to figure out what students need, and that it is being done. So that's really nice. And then, then one more thing. I know that we will return to full funding again, and I know I promised the Office of Higher Ed documents that kind of show our levels of funding from the 1980s, certainly to now, that actually make the claim that 1988, the 87-88 might have been like the year that the state took on the highest share of our funding. So we are definitely been in a downward slope, and then an even steeper downward slope as of 2007. But I used some of the numbers that we got at our last meeting to get to a sort of if we thought about full funding, not just as, what share of expenses does the state take on, but what kinds of things do we want and how might we fund them? So these are like the roughest of rough estimates, just like averaging averages on the sheets that they gave us. But let's say next year, fiscal year 24, the system is already asking for 106 million next year, 116 million in fiscal year 25. And that takes into consideration, CBAC raises, decreased tuition, fringe benefits that are increasing by 5% a year, and then the expired ARPA and HERF funding, right? But if we wanted to do something like, we discussed PAC and the fact that it can't be a first dollar design, but one of the things we could do is raise the minimum amount, the minimum benefit up over the cost of tuition to the cost of attendance. And that could be one way that we could fill the gap for students for whom like not being able to work is a huge obstacle. It's the time, it's the opportunity cost. So our yearly allocation for PAC is like 15 million. Say we increased it to 5 million to try to do that and potentially expand it to the CSUs, right? Just a little bit or something. Make some minimal improvement to PAC by about $5 million. We know that developmental education is suffering right now, and it seems that this whole ACME fight, it seems that what we've chosen to do is bet on the students that have the best chance of succeeding and not bother to invest in the students who are less likely to succeed. If we were to be able to invest in them, we would need more oversight, new structure, a whole lot of things, but one of the things we would need is more money, right? So our yearly allocation for developmental ed plus outcomes-based funding, et cetera, is about 11 million. Say we increased it by 5 million. The community college workforce is 74% contingent. If we tried to get even like 50% of our workforce to full-time jobs with benefits that are, just like anything remotely like non-exploitative work, basically. I can't think of a more polite way to say it. We would need, let's say, about 700 more positions. That would get us another $100 million. That's what that would cost. If we were to properly staff, not even properly, but get closer to properly staffing our community colleges. Ben and Sean talked about the need for the state to cover fringe completely. Estimating based on what he said they cover now, I would say we need another 100 million. And then there's a lot of wiggle room in there. I would have said, I was trying to figure out the cost, and I'm sure Tua, Rob, et cetera, will talk about this when you talk about Western, of preserving a liberal arts education at every location. But it turns out that it's not actually costing us a heck of, like, there's no money savings in getting rid of it, right? So just doing those things, right? Not being an exploitative employer at the community colleges, covering PAC, covering developmental ed, and filling the deficit, we would need between 330 million and 350 million in fiscal year 24 if we got up to speed. That would be double our existing block grant. It is currently 350 million and has been for like the past 15 years. So when we talk about full funding, we are talking about more than just we need more money. We're talking about a complete re-envisioning of the system, a completely new kind of commitment that the state makes to us, because this isn't just like we need, we need more than double what we already have. So I just want to kind of put that out there and suggest that, the legislative session is coming up in a month. And we need to start making appeals for this funding, but not just for the funding because we know it goes wherever the heck it wants to go, usually. We have to start making demands for the kinds of things, I would say, that we want to see in the system, and then talking about how much it will actually cost and getting some help on this, because it's pretty huge. That's pretty much all I have. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that. All right, that's it for me. Oh, Lois.
Are we not going to mention at all the unmitigated disaster that's been occurring the last 3 days about the login issues?
Oh, yes. Please go ahead.
Well, we've had an unmitigated disaster in the last 3 days when the faculty, staff, and students have been unable to log into any of our programs, including MyComNet and Blackboard, et cetera, because they introduced multi-factor authentication, or they didn't introduce it, or they screwed it up, or they messed it up, or whatever they did. And they haven't been able to fix it. They haven't communicated with anybody. And it's just been a disaster. It has affected most people, but it has some people it has not affected. And they're getting thousands of tickets from students and faculty, and they're waiting days, and they don't know what's going on or why they can't access or why they can't get in. And so this is the end of the semester. So we've got projects and papers and finals coming up, et cetera, and students are panicking and faculty are panicking, and it's just an unmitigated disaster. And there is no fix in place so far. And again, we've not gotten any kind of official notification about what's going on and what we should be doing and what students should be doing, or nothing. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. And it's been going on for the past 3 days. And then tomorrow through Sunday, there is a scheduled update where students will not be able to get into Blackboard also. So there is potential for some of our students to have been locked out of Blackboard for a full week right before the last week of school. And I've been, personally trying to figure out how to move deadlines around, but it really just means that they'll have everything coming in at the last week. There's not a lot you can do. So it's
right. And a lot of students aren't aware of what's going on, and a lot of faculty, especially adjunct faculty, are not exactly aware of what's going on. So they've been trying to get help. I've been kind of in the middle of this, and I've had a faculty member this morning, an adjunct, who emailed our Norwalk IT help desk, got an email response from them dated from 2020 that said that the NCC IT help desk would no longer take tickets, and they had to go to Hartford or wherever the heck they went. And so they went up to Hartford, and they were then redirected back to Norwalk. And so they were running around in a circle, chasing their tail and getting no response whatsoever. And then I had somebody else who is an adjunct who teaches at Quinnipiac as well, and they use the same server, I guess, that we do for Blackboard. So her login is a little weird. They have been attempting to fix her for 3 days. She teaches one course on ground and one course online, but she uses Blackboard for both courses. So, and then students are freaking out because they can't get in and they don't know what's going on, and they can't get in touch with their instructor, and they can't get to their email, and they can't, it's just been a total nightmare, and it still continues to be a total nightmare. And there's been on top of all of this, there's been no communication from anybody about anything on this.
in response to what you're saying, Brendan, if they'd waited 2 weeks, there would be no problem. This is a consistent issue with the community colleges. We've had this in the first week of classes before. We've had this. There's just no coordination between what happens with IT and what our teaching schedule is. So it just continues to happen at the most insane times for some reason. Ron and then Jen.
Yeah, there must be some simple, although perhaps not efficient, solution to this, because I had 2 students yesterday with this problem. Okay, and luckily for me, I teach a floor below the IT help desk. So I just brought one student upstairs said, "Go talk to these folks in the help desk room." Within 15 minutes, they had fixed the problem for him. The other one, although throughout the day, they must have been getting more and more requests, because by the afternoon, when I had an afternoon class, that student who had a problem, they told him it would take an hour. But still, an hour is better than a week, right? So there must be a way to solve it, because I've had two students who have had this problem resolved locally. It's just I don't know how many students, I don't know how many faculty, and I don't know whether or not we have the local resources to fulfill as many people with the problem as we may have. But I do know that there's a solution, because I've had two students have the problem solved within the time frame of the class I was teaching.
Yeah, it was solved very easily for me too, but it's the not knowing, because you're not going to hear from the students who are affected. Jen?
I just wanted to add, in addition to what Lois was saying, that a lot of it is the treatment of faculty and probably students by different support staff, because I'm having a horrible time with HR and payroll. I know those are ongoing issues, but the IT people, it was incredibly frustrating. I put in a ticket, an expedited ticket. I never heard back on any of them. I ended up being bounced around. I got an email back from the IT director, you know, it's inappropriate to ask me a question, kind of thing. And I get that a lot from HR. And it's just sort of like, nope, everybody wants to talk about how tired and overworked they are, and everyone wants to pass the buck. But the reality is that if the classes aren't running, that's the number one concern. And I don't know what can be done about it, but it seemed to me like the obvious fix, because it's about 10 clicks in to fix the problem, right? So if you said, okay, every campus, Three Rivers has 70 faculty, guys, log in at 11, 2, or 4 o'clock. We're going to show you these 10 clicks in 15 minutes and everybody's good. I don't understand what's so hard to coordinate these. Like, why do we have to send students one at a time down when we can be creating a video to show them the 10 clicks? Especially if we're dealing with IT, right? Like, it shouldn't be that complicated. Sorry, that was my vent. Thanks for listening. You can tell I'm on a roll today.
I don't know if anyone else can speak to this, but I think that doesn't work for everyone. I think there are some people who have to actually show up with their ID to be on that. Like, I think.
Well, I just mean, like, at least with the faculty, there's, you know, that might be true, but we could have gotten all the teachers back online really quickly. And then had the teachers be able to help their own students even. It didn't have to be this huge mystery. And the fact that they made everybody fill out tickets as if they were going to ever reply to the ticket thing drives. I don't know. How do you guys feel about the tickets for everything? Drives me crazy.
Well, it's not only that, it's not only the tickets. I had one faculty member who teaches one of his classes online. So he contacted IT with the student's name and ID number and so forth. And IT came back to him and said, oh, no, you need to have the student contact us because we need to verify the student. Now, I'm sorry, the faculty member just verified one of his students, and the student teaches online. He's not is taking a course online. He's not coming to campus. You're telling him that he has to have the student contact IT directly and go to campus to get this fixed because they can't do it. I mean, it's totally insane.
And on that cheery note, community colleges, everyone.
So this is a problem across the board at all the community colleges.
Yes.
And you're quite right. I mean, this is hardly the time when you want to do a system-wide or subsystem-wide or system constituent unit, however we want to call it, semi-autonomous component upgrade. It's not a very good time to do it.
And it's kind of interesting that this was not done at the state universities at the same time, this multi-factor authentication.
We already have a two-factor authentication. That is, every once in a while, when you log in to Blackboard or to the rosters or whatever you get a phone message with a 6-digit code that you have to put in. Is that what they're trying to implement at the community colleges?
It's a multi-factor authentication. I don't know what areas they're trying to do it in. I guess I have no idea. Whatever it is, it's all screwed up.
Well, let's take note of that and see what happens, and also see to what extent that's a problem having to go through Hartford back to your community college rather than directly dealing with the community college. There's one other item, but we can deal with that under other business, which is
Matthew, can I just ask-
Ron and Colleen and I went to the seminar on governance structures and elections for the community colleges. Perhaps we can come back to that as a last item on the agenda under other business, number 8.
Or on the faculty control of curriculum resolution.
Yeah, so we can mention it there too then.
Matthew,
Let's go on then to the resolution in support of Western Connecticut State University Social Sciences. I think Ritua is still here. Is she still here? Yes. So let me put the resolution that we're proposing. And this is similar to one which we passed at the CCSU Senate, but it's a little bit more elaborate. I could just read it out for the record, and then we can have a discussion. Whereas the Western Social Sciences Department and its majors, minors, and upper division courses in anthropology, sociology, economics, and political science, as well as the meteorology program, are in jeopardy due to what the provost of that university deems as low enrollment. And I think we should put here /completion. Whereas both the CCSU and Southern Connecticut State University Senates have in the past rejected the same low enrollment criteria being applied to all programs as failing to distinguish between programs with nationwide small, medium, and large enrollments, whereas the evaluation of programs solely on the basis of quantitative factors, such as percentage of capacity enrollment, is one-sided and neglects qualitative aspects of course content and social relevance. Whereas any cost savings by dismissing part-time faculty and replacing them by full-time faculty are minimal and directed at the most vulnerable category of faculty, whereas tuition loss to the university from students who transfer elsewhere for these programs will be substantial, whereas stripping Western of its social science majors is detrimental to its role as a university in the CSU system that provides students with the full range of liberal arts and sciences programs. Therefore be resolved, 1, that the FAC supports the social sciences faculty at Western in their effort to protect and promote needed majors, minors, and upper division courses in their disciplines, and that should be added, and meteorology faculty. 2, that the FAC affirms its opposition to a single criterion, it's not spelled correctly, for low enrollment independent of national statistics on small, medium, and large departments. 3, that the FAC rejects the use of solely quantitative factors in determining program persistence to the exclusion of qualitative considerations of course content and the spirit of the university as offering the full complement of liberal arts and sciences programs. And 4, that the FAC reaffirms the role of faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy and the role of shared governance in university decision making. And there may be a page 2 here.
There's a final paragraph.
Yes. 5, that the FAC calls upon the interim president of Western to reject the proposed program eliminations, and failing that will advocate against the cuts at the Board of Regents and its Academic Students Affairs Committee. So I'll move that as a motion, and then we can have discussion.
Are you moving it with the additions of meteorology faculty?
Yes, sorry,
Criteria.
meteorology, and perhaps the word where enrollment appears also /completion, because that was a consideration.
I second.
Okay, let's go to discussion. Ritua, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to add something here, and then we maybe we can talk a little bit about the curriculum committee meeting yesterday.
Yes, so we have the CUCAS, the Committee on Undergraduate Curriculum and Academic Standards, meeting, a special meeting to address this the proposal to discontinue the four programs mentioned in this resolution yesterday, and the meeting went for a little bit over 2 hours. David was there to speak on behalf of the Social Sciences Department, but also on the behalf, of course, of the liberal arts education. And we also have a couple of, I think, one alumni and someone from the NOAA office in New York City to share, to also speak on behalf of the, in this case, on behalf of the meteorology program. But it was, I think it's 61 people showed up at the meeting overall. And I think we showed strongly the support for these programs, which is great. The committee is composed mostly with mostly faculty, but also some administrators. And we voted to support the programs, meaning we voted to recommend against the proposal. So I'm going to write up the report, which I will send to Senate. And the Senate meeting will be on Monday, December 12th, starting at 3:30 p.m. To talk about, well, this is one of the agenda items because it's also a regular Senate meeting. And so that's where we are right now. Do you want me to add anything else, David?
No, I was myself quite impressed. When you mentioned NOAA, that's the National Oceanographic and Weather Service. That's a major federal agency. There was also, I thought, someone there from one of the weathermen from one of the local TV stations.
Yes.
So, you know, I didn't know very much about the meteorology aspect of it, and had to add that in because I thought that was more of an afterthought in their thinking of cancellation. But it definitely appears to be a well-respected and highly successful program. Mention was made of Dr. Mel, and I pointed out when I first came to Connecticut, I didn't know very much about anything other than CCSU, and one fact about at least one of the other CSU universities, Western, namely Dr. Mel from his weather forecasts. But I thought that the social science faculty were quite eloquent and very clear with the idea that, well, you know, that seemed to be floated by the administration, that it's not so bad. After all, it's not an attack on the faculty. They're going to keep their jobs, but they're only going to teach 100 and 200 level courses, right? And all the upper division classes will be eliminated. And supposedly they'll be satisfied with that. They'll stay at the university and function at that low level. That seems highly improbable, and moreover, a waste of resources. The other fact, which I thought was important, was that the expected savings amounts to some $200,000 by eliminating the part-time faculty teaching the 100 and 200 level sections and having full-time faculty teach those courses. That's the equivalent of the tuition for 20 students, right? Who
Yes.
probably would leave as a result. So there's, I mean, besides the fact that the $200,000 or $240,000, if that was the exact number, is de minimis in respect to the nearly $15 million budget shortfall at Western. Even the money supposedly saved by eliminating part-time faculty, who are the most vulnerable of faculty as well, would be almost immediately lost from students transferring elsewhere in order to do those majors. Or in declining to enroll at Western and enrolling somewhere else because those majors are being offered. And the last thing is that I pointed out, when we had that discussion at the Finance Committee, the one time that Western came up in the 2.5 years that I've been there was a plan for holding back on renewing or filling 73 vacant positions for something like a saving of $11.5 million. That was the burden on that was largely falling upon teaching faculty and administrative faculty for over 50%. But besides that, the savings now proposed here, even if they were genuine, the $240,000. That's a drop in the fountain with respect to the total shortfall of budget at the university. So I was impressed by the discussion. I was pleased to be able to participate. Kalina was there as well to show solidarity. And I think it's important that we pass this resolution and that we be very insistent. Hopefully, the interim president at Western will listen to what the curriculum committee is proposing and presumably what the Senate as well will conclude. If not, then we'll take up the issue at the ASA committee and at the board.
Also, I actually want to add a couple of things. First is, as you said, David, this is the impetus for this proposal is supposedly, yes, to save money from adjuncts, not hiring these adjuncts. We're talking about only about $240,000 annually, and that amounts to about just actually one full professor, salary and fringe benefits. That is, we're talking about 15 to 16 adjuncts per semester. And as you said, it's a drop in the bucket, and it's going to put Western in a deeper financial hole because the full-time faculty are staying here, but we're going to be to teach under load, many of us, because, for example, we have three full-time economics professors in this department, and the provost plan is to just make us teach 120, well, actually only 2 intro courses that are required in business school. We teach about 6 sections per semester of those 2 courses per semester total. That's 12. That's just half of the workload, the full workload. What are we supposed to do? That is, so they're still paying us for now if this proposal succeeds. So it's just going to put us in a bigger financial hole. And also, actually, the financial analysis is very flawed because, as the Rob Eisenson mentioned, he's in the physics, astronomy, and meteorology department, mentioned that the weather center, the cost of weather center is included, but not the revenues from the weather center. Also, it does not include the net of revenue and cost of courses that we teach in this department to non-majors, so the tuition from non-majors, not the tuition of our majors who take courses from other departments, which is, in business term, we call it transfer pricing. That is not included. So but this is, what I'm saying is, this is union busting 101. It's very clear, because half of the union leadership is in this department. Yeah, so it's very clear. Obviously they don't want to say it, but it's very clear because there are other departments. We have almost 100 majors in the department. There are several other departments that have many lower majors. And of course, I don't want any of them to be eliminated. Of course not, because that means fewer opportunities for our students. And also for community college students who want to transfer to Western to finish their 4-year degrees.
Brendan, thank you, Rotem.
Yeah, I had 2 things I wanted to mention. So I was able to attend the CUCAS meeting for the first half hour. And I think that in my own personal experience as an undergraduate, I went to a college that eliminated a major. It was communications. And what they did with that faculty member who was left, who was a tenured faculty member, is they had him teach computer science. So Ritua, I would fully expect that the plan is to ask your faculty to teach outside of the fields where they have their degrees. Elsa Nunez has actually threatened to do that in a meeting after closing programs, I think she gave the example of theater faculty teaching communications, I believe it was. So, the issue there is students, going to university with faculty teaching outside of their credentialed area is not an appealing prospect. And that's going to harm the ability to recruit students to Western, and that impacts all the faculty there. And it affects the students in terms of the quality of the education. The other thing I wanted to mention was I'm a little concerned if my colleagues at Western are okay with this, then I'll just table this concern. But my impression is that it's actually the so-called completer count that is low, not enrollments. The chair of the social sciences department made it pretty clear that actually the programs they're looking at cutting have comparatively high enrollments. The number of majors they quote unquote produce, may not be, maybe in some kind of range that is arbitrarily labeled as not successful. But in terms of enrollments in classes, bodies in seats, it sounds like these programs are doing some heavy lifting. I could be wrong about that. Like I said, I'll table that if my colleagues at Western are okay with it. But, based on my impression, I would replace enrollments with completions in the resolution completely and get rid of enrollments. But I could be wrong.
Brendan, I'll take that as an amendment on your part, and I'll do that.
Well,
I'll
only
do
if
enrollment / completers, and that'll cover both parts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their administration has said about enrollments. I didn't look at it closely enough. So, but those are my reflections.
When pushed to the wall at the last BOR meeting, the visiting interim president Barron said, "You hired me to delete low completion programs. That's what I'm here to do." That was it. And enrollment is kind of a loose term here because we really are looking at, if we look at the number of seats we fill by our disciplines, both for majors and across the disciplines at the lower and upper division general education, we are every term asked to add more classes at the lower division. So it's not that we're not getting students who are coming. Now, that means they're enrolling in the university and taking our classes. It's the low completer. Now, what I understand that Southern protested the low completer idea years ago, and then it was modified in 2018 to include, to make sure that it wasn't reduced simply to lower completion, because there might be other reasons for a program to be offered. And that seems to have slipped away in the discourse at Western. It comes up when we're talking to each other, but it seems like it's not visible to Barron at this point, what those contingencies might be. But I think you're right that we should be emphasizing the low completer issue, but enrollment may cover a lot of other things that we're not able to mention specifically.
Colina, and then Rotua.
Actually, go ahead, Ritua. I'm reconsidering some of what I was saying based on that conversation right there.
Okay, you'll ask, Karina. Just kidding. So I also want to mention, yes, that so Baron met with my department a couple of weeks ago, something like that. And I took some notes. He mentioned maximizing efficiency at least 10 times. He also said just incredible things like shared governance is about roles. The decision rests with me because that's the way shared governance works. Yeah. And basically he said that we have to pay our own bills with students in our classes, meaning that we have to at least break even in our classes. And that and also about enrollment, he said, because the magic number for completers, for completion is 10, the minimum is 10. So he said each program needs to have a minimum of 40 majors So on average, we graduate 10, and which we don't know where that came from to begin with, and there has been no explanation. So that's what I would like to add.
Okay, based on this discussion, I've added enrollment/completions to the resolution. I think that's helpful. And Mike Shea, I don't know if you recall the Southern resolution, but this came up at Central in 2018. And I'm in a small department. I'm in a philosophy department. We don't have 10 completions on average, over a 3-year period. And if you use that criteria, which is independent, as I point out in the resolution, of national statistics on small, medium, and large programs, then you would not have at any CSU university a philosophy department major, a physics major, an anthropology major, and there's many more. There's many more. I'll tell you the number. It's for philosophy departments. This is going to shock some of you, especially if you're from a psychology department or an English department with lots of majors. The national average is between 1/10 and 0.3% of full-time students becoming philosophy majors. I can't say much more on our behalf, except that, if you hold us to the same standard as the psychology department, then it's pretty clear. There's a significant discrepancy. Let me add just one more thing. I think that I read recently that either 4 or 6 prime ministers of Great Britain came out of the PPE program, which is the Politics, Philosophy, and Economics program at Cambridge or at Oxford. The degree, by the way, which Bertrand Russell had. So, this one standard fits all. And the type of reasoning, the type of quantitative reasoning, independent of discipline, and disrespectful of the notion of a university where not every program is enrolled at the same percentage rates as every other one. If not, we would just have as a university English departments, math departments, and history departments, and let's forget the rest. For some of us, that would be unfortunate. I suppose I could go and do elementary logic in a math department, so I could keep my job. But this notion of the same metric for all programs is arbitrary and wrong-headed. Mike, I don't know if you want to add something, Mike Shea?
No, the same issues though is that it's the gen ed program. I think wise provosts know that when you're adding faculty to professional programs and to increase the number of students coming to your schools, you also need to hire in the arts and sciences to keep the gen ed program also lively. So I don't know how many wise provosts there are, but yeah, we've had that same issue at Southern, but not quite the same. Nothing was threatened with being cut, but there were numbers being thrown around talking about graduation numbers, and I think we've been more successful in convincing that enrollment numbers are much more important. So we have more. I think at Southern, we have some people who listen to that general education thinking, which is helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to put up the Southern resolution. I just found it on my. Let's see if I got that.
And I just found one from Central that I stuck in the chat.
Yeah.
From 2018.
And so we'll make that available. The Central and the Southern ones. We'll make those available to you. I'll send it out as an email attachment. Is there more discussion on the resolution as sort of friendly amended? So in other words,
I just want to say that it made a difference at Southern. So we shouldn't not do this, right?
Yes.
And the only other thing I want to say, I put in the chat that phrase should be a single criterion.
Yes.
Okay.
Where is that?
It's toward the bottom.
I'll find it and make the change.
The seventh paragraph. The second after, therefore be it resolved.
Okay. Oh yes, criterion. Righty. We're going to Do some magic here. Oh, criterion. No, that's not any better.
It's yeah, ION, right.
Okay. And there's that final paragraph as well. So can we proceed to a vote now on this? Those who are voting members, those who are in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. That's approved, and we'll send that along to Ritua, and if necessary, we'll use it at the ASA and at the board. This is really a significant issue, and one that we have to follow quite closely.
I didn't mute fast enough, but abstained.
Pardon me?
I didn't.
Oh, you abstained. Okay, one abstention.
Unmuted
Thank you.
fast enough.
We now have the resolution on faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy. I'm going to put this over to Kalina, but I'll put it up on display. One second. I've lost my little share button. There it is.
While you're doing that, can I just ask Colina, what was it that you posted in the chat, Colina? What is that document?
It's the central resolution from.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll
2018
send you
of
this other.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Kalina, do you want to introduce this resolution?
Sure. If you expand it just a little bit, I'll be able to read it. I know, I made it really small. Okay, thank you.
How's that?
Great.
Okay, I'll have to scroll.
I'll read it through. So, whereas colleges and universities are institutions of higher learning focused on the transmission, creation, and application of knowledge and the skills, including critical thinking needed to accomplish this mission. Whereas faculty are directly in contact with the students who are the chief beneficiaries of college and university education through enhanced access to further higher education, professional degrees, and careers of their choice. Whereas faculty, by their education and experience, are the best qualified to determine the content of academic programs and courses, including seminars and labs, and thereby teach and mentor students. And whereas the course catalog for the Consolidated Community College was compiled in the absence of elected and representative governance bodies for the Consolidated College, whereas the Career and College Success course was added to the Consolidated Catalog by way of Board of Regents resolution after being rejected by all curricular bodies to which it was proposed, by all governance bodies at which it was reviewed, and at all consolidation committees at which it was considered. Whereas a learning outcome was removed by the SFASACC and then re-added to the CCS 101 course by CCIC, we should put definitions of those at the bottom, and the BOR, though none of these groups is a faculty or curricular body. Whereas alignment and completion of math and English was approved by the board without the support of the established statewide curricular bodies for math and English. Whereas the ACME policy of the BOR stipulates for both math and English gateway courses and without the university's prior approval, that the course's transferability to all CSCU institutions will be based on learning outcomes and not dependent on course prerequisites. Whereas the product of the established curricular process for the consolidated biology curriculum was overridden without providing any process for addressing the serious concerns of content experts, and without a process of making it transparent to students and to transfer institutions, there resulted limited transferability of courses. Whereas the foregoing demonstrates a consistent and escalating overreach of administrators into curricular matters, its consequent threat to academic standards, and the resulting strain on relationships with transfer institutions. Be it resolved that faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy is essential to the proper functioning of the colleges and universities, and is a priority component of shared governance in this respect. That curriculum includes the programs and individual courses, including seminars, labs, and other activities, such as community engagement, that are component parts of this courses, that pedagogy includes the mode of delivery of courses, whether in person, online, or hybrid, as determined in the best interest of students by faculty who are responsible for the courses, that attempts to diminish faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy is detrimental to student success by diluting or skewing course content or delivery, and that the FAC affirms the central importance of faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy, including the mode of delivery, in any institutional reforms. So I think we all know the sort of, we know about ACME, we know about CCS 101, we know about the diversity outcome that was removed and then placed in by BOR resolution. The one issue that we have not talked about here, I don't think, was the issue of that's currently sort of in dispute in biology. And is Carmen here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Could you speak to that just a little bit, Carmen?
Yeah, so Colleen, I think this is really well worded too. I like this a lot, and I know the other science faculty and like this too. So there's a lot of science faculty who are realizing that the online lab component is just not working. And we've had before in the past, pretty much all the classes were on ground. And we're really trying to get back, I mean, the labs to go back on ground, but we have people in the system office who insist that we got to leave this up to faculty, and that even though we had when we had done this with the biology alignment group, we had picked modalities, and we picked one biology class that we thought would be okay to have it online, but all the other ones should be on ground. And that was passed through the different committees. And I don't really know what the committees are again, because the names that are just go beyond me. But we did what we should have done, and it was approved all along. And then our provost is basically just really pushing back and just saying, nope, I just want some of these classes, these labs have to be offered online. And then, so we've been also talking about how this is not necessarily like the same outcomes. You can't have the same outcome in an on-ground lab as you could on ground, sorry. And so we're saying, listen, first of all, we don't want them to be online, but if you insist on having some labs on ground or online, then we need to change the outcomes. And they're saying, no, we can't do that. It has to be all the same. So and then the other thing is that there really is a problem. Like right now, the nursing schools, I'm talking to the nursing director at Capitol, and with COVID and online learning, there is a huge number of nursing students who are dropping out and who are failing. And there might be multiple reasons for that. And today there is actually a meeting with the nursing directors or nursing faculty at Capitol, but this is within the whole system, the high dropout rate. And there was even a director of the sonography program at Gateway that was at the previous meeting that we met with the biology faculty on Tuesday night, who said the same problem. We have students coming in with 4.0s and she can only take in 12 students at a time. And every 3 people have dropped out and the other students are not doing well. I'm hearing that, students who are nursing students just don't know the basics on anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology, and you just can't succeed in a nursing program. And what we're seeing is, a high failure rate. And, we it just doesn't seem to, I don't know, we're not really quite sure what to do here. It's just not working. But I feel like even though I teach these classes, I've taught them on ground, try to teach them online, it's not even close to the same. I see what a detriment it is to the students. It just falls on deaf ears.
I think there's also the issue of transparency and transferability. So some of these classes will not transfer to, say, UConn, etc. And students will enroll in them, even, if they are online, they don't transfer. And students will enroll in them without that knowledge if they aren't clearly marked as such.
Right. But right now, we're getting away with it because there's no way with the transcripts doesn't designate whether that class is online or on ground. So right now, people are kind of getting away with, I think UConn is saying they're going to ask the students coming into the program whether it's on ground or online, and then it's up to the student to say what class they took, whether it was on ground or online. It's not really working. And then honestly, even the Gateway director of sonography was actually just, because the problem is if you only have 12 students in your program and most of the students are not doing well, you have a high failure rate, that's going to affect accreditation of these programs too. And so trying to figure out a way to how am I best able to kind of figure out, I can't go by the GPA, a 4.0 in anatomy physiology doesn't mean they really know anything. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way to kind of make sure these students are actually know their stuff. And she even mentioned, I might even just try to just only get students who've taken on-ground classes. But again, it's even hard for her to find out which of those classes are on ground. So anyway, I'm probably going way above and beyond what you guys are hearing, but it's a huge problem. And I think eventually it's going to come back to But I mean, maybe after many students have failed out, eventually it's gonna come back and say, oh yeah, this really isn't, online labs aren't the same as on-ground labs, which is amazing that we're even having this conversation. I can't even believe that we're having this, so.
Mike Shea?
I just wanted to, I really like this too, Kalina. As we were just saying, I just wanted to add to the second resolve.
Hang on a second. Let me just put it up.
I put this in the chat. I think we should say, I don't know if you can make it big enough for people to see. The second resolve, that curriculum includes the programs and individual courses, including seminars, labs, continuing education courses, and other activities. I wanted to add the phrase continuing education courses because some talk is being had that somehow continuing education courses don't fall under faculty curriculum control. So could we put that in?
Yep. It should be in there now.
Okay, thanks. And then the second, the third one, no, the fourth one, no, the second one. I'm sorry, Jesus Christ. The third one, that pedagogy includes the mode of delivery of courses because content cannot be separated from form. In other words, I just want to give a reason.
Includes delivery courses whether in person or online.
Well, I actually decided where to put it, but let me say the general point is I just wanted to mention that something like the phrase because content cannot be separated from form. In other words, we all know that you can't teach the exact same course when you go online. So form and content matter. So wherever that best goes in the sentence about delivery of courses, maybe even to start with that because content cannot be separated from form, pedagogy includes the mode of delivery of courses. Maybe start with that.
Hang on a second.
And again, I don't know if people want to include it. I'm willing to debate it. I just wanted to offer it.
Lois?
I agree with Mike on that, but I guess I'm questioning if you put references to standards 3.15 and 4.3, 3.15 is referencing the faculty-owned curriculum pretty much, and 4.3 talks about coherence in programs leading to degrees or other awards of a coherent design and are characterized by appropriate breadth, depth, continuity, sequential progression, and synthesis of learning. Coherence is demonstrated through learning goals, structure, and content, policies and procedures for admission, retention, and completion, instructional methods and procedures. I mean, they specifically mention that in there.
We can put as a footnote reference to those two. That's of NESHE standards, right?
NESHE standards 3.15 and 4.3.
3.15 and 4.3. All right, I'll add that as a footnote.
4.13, yeah.
4.3.
Oh, 4.3, okay, all right.
3.15 and 4.3.
Right.
Okay, I
Also,
will add that.
David, one other thing in that third category where you put because, we have to start with that and then put a comma after it because it has to be
Yes, and
parallel.
I've got because twice now.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, no, it's all right. That because content cannot be
Yeah.
separated from form, comma. Okay.
And there's one other typo in the top part under the whereases, the third whereas. I think there shouldn't be a semicolon before, after labs and before and, just a comma. The third whereas.
Yeah, got it.
Right there. Yeah, thank you. Sorry to be picky.
Well, that's all right. That's why we have the thing online. And that's why, I'll save it. Okay. So are there, whoops, what does that do? I don't even want to say what I just did. Okay. Any other discussion? If not, let's pass to a vote.
And the motion is to pass it with these modifications and to forward it to the provost with a request to have it considered at the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstentions, if any?
Abstain.
One abstention. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing that now. And let us go back to the regular agenda. We have approval of the proposed calendar of meetings for 2023. Kalina, do you have that handy?
Pam's no longer with us. I can find it quickly. Sorry.
I'm here. Do you want me to share it?
Yeah.
Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
would you?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Give me 15 seconds here. Calendars. Draft 20. Okay.
Kalina, a minor point. When I went to the link for the resolution opposing the CTBOR low completion review process, I got that, but there was a second document, wasn't there at Southern? Did somebody have that?
Yeah, I have it.
David has
Okay.
that one.
Okay.
But I'm what I'll do is I'll send both of them as an email attachment to everybody. And that way you won't have to look at, because after the meeting is over, the chat won't be there.
Yeah, I just printed it out quickly. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Pam. So I found it.
Oh, did you? Okay, I was just about to share. Okay, you got it. Go ahead.
Cool. Let me make it a little bigger and share. Here it is. Can everyone see it? So here's our column right here. I have one suggestion. And it is that we try to switch our joint meeting with the BOR to June rather than April, so that we can sort of reflect on the semester as a whole and we have some time to kind of prepare for it.
Kalina?
Yeah?
I reviewed that with Chair Ryan and she is fine moving that to June. So
great.
That's done.
Cool. And is the committee fine with that? Because I know that some folks are off contract, but it seems like a better time to do it. The other consideration is that if we have our FAC conference at the usual time, it would be in April. So we will have an opportunity to meet with board members at that point also. So with that small change.
Lena, can I just ask, when you said June, what date in June?
June 16th.
Thank you. And that's a what day of the week?
It would be a Friday. So we would
Thank
just
you.
move this joint with the BOR down 2 slots.
Thank you.
So it would function, I hope, just like the meeting we had, that the beginning of your regular FAC meeting would be joint with the board, and then you would continue your normal course of business as the FAC by yourself after that.
Sounds good.
Is there any problem for people who will be away during the month of June? No, that's okay then.
I see, oh, one hand. Mary Beth?
Hi, I'm just comparing these dates with the new CT state system governance schedule that just came out. And it looks like the only date that there would be a conflict is that January 20th. And I don't know if this will affect anybody because we don't know who's on the College Senate yet. But there is going to be a College Senate meeting, the first College Senate meeting on Friday, January 20th on their schedule right now. So I don't know how many people that would affect, but I'm just throwing that out there.
And is that in the afternoon also?
That is in the afternoon also. Yeah, that's the only date that I saw on that schedule, at least for spring semester, because that's what we have so far. That looks to be in conflict. There's some morning conflicts, morning meetings, but not afternoon.
You want to move that date, Kalina? The full board is in recess for the month of January. So the calendar is yours for January if you choose a different Friday at 1, or if you choose a different day. But from historically speaking, it's been a good meeting time for you, but you can pick the 27th or the 13th of January for that matter.
Okay, so the 20th would be the first Friday once we're back on contract. The 27th would be the second, and we'd have the benefit of hearing about what happened at Senate. Would you like to make that modification? Does it seem reasonable?
To go to which one? January 27th?
January 27th.
Done.
Is anyone opposed to that modification? Okay, is there any more discussion?
Are
Because
you saying
I don't, well, the
23rd is
only,
a Monday?
Pardon?
January 23rd is a Monday.
27th.
Oh,
Yeah.
is there any way we can move the June joint meeting to May? I'm just a little concerned about having it at a time when people are off contract.
We have a significant number of commencements starting up and commitments on the board and the regents
Okay.
and celebrations on campuses that we need to get people to. So
Okay.
that's why I either put it in April and the board was quick to say yes to the June suggestion.
Okay, that's fine. Then forget what I had to say.
I never forget it.
Kalina, I don't want you to change it just because of me, but I cannot make June 20th. I have a department meeting with the president and the provost. So, but don't change for me.
Is that, wait, was that
January 20th.
January 20th?
27th,
So
I mean. January 27th.
Okay, gotcha.
Don't worry about it.
Right. Is anyone else not able to make the 27th? Okay. Bye, Carmen. All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we vote to make official this calendar for the next year with the following modifications. Our January meeting will be on the 27th. And our joint meeting, or first joint meeting with the BOR will be on June 16th instead of in April. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And last chance to object to that. Any changes?
No objection, but that was June what? I missed that.
June
16th.
16th. Thank you.
All right. Are there any objections? We'll do it that way. And that's it. So that's our schedule for next year.
And
Could someone possibly send that out? Because I
Yes.
tried to scratch the dates, but I just want to make sure we have them.
Sure.
I will clean up a copy. It is going to be formally approved by the board on the 15th of December. And then as soon as I can take that watermark off and it doesn't say draft anymore, we can officially share it. There may be some tweaks still coming in the other committees. So I'd hate to send out a schedule that is approved for yours. I can summarize your dates and send them to Kalina as approved so she can share it with the committee.
that would be great, Pam. Thank
All
you.
right, super.
Okay. Formation of a planning committee for the spring conference. We had that little mini conference. Was it last month? The time goes by so fast. But that was quite successful. We had over 150 people online. So, Kalina, do you have further information about the funding from the system office? And you want to take this and just see, do we want to continue with the same group for the planning for it? And we were talking about April, if I recall correctly.
Well, I know we won't have the same group, I think that we'll need to form a slightly larger group for sure, because we want to do something slightly bigger. We have at least an unofficial sort of confirmation of willingness to fund this the way it used to be this year. If we want to go back to like an in-person event, and we think that the spring is we're willing to do that sort of thing in the spring. So it may be bigger. We have to get the official confirmation. But I think we're looking for something a little bit more substantive and or like in terms of like a little bit larger, like time-wise, and possibly inviting a speaker. Because whether we have funding from the system or we return to our unions again, I think we'd be attempting to do something a little bigger. So yeah, it's a matter of getting together and starting to think about what we want to do and how we want to do it, and then making the appropriate requests for funding if necessary. Is anyone interested in joining that little group? And I do hope, I know that Mary Beth has already said that she can't continue, right? You'll be missed. Thank you for what you've done so far. And hopefully we can hold on to Diane and Sue, et cetera, so that we can move it forward. So is anyone interested in having a chat about what we might do for the conference in the spring? I see you, Lois. All right. Anyone else? I know what conversation I want to have with you, Lois, about I think I have a feeling I know who you want to invite. But does anybody else want to?
Can I ask you a question, Colleen? I'm sorry. This is Jen Long. You know, as you're asking this question, I know I've said this before, but I'm just reflecting back on, I'm going to be on sabbatical, but I'm reflecting back on when I was trying to get voted in on the FAC. And, you know, when I thought about what my role was going to be, it wasn't just coming to meetings and not saying anything and not volunteering for anything. And I'm not going to try to put anyone on the spot, but I'm a little bit frustrated as a member for a few years now of seeing the same people doing the bulk of the heavy lifting. Of course, you being the main person. So I just would like to say that out loud, even though it might be inappropriate, because I think we have to go back and, you know, check in with ourselves and say, what did we commit to as FAC members? And, you know, we all have to share the burden here. So I hope that some of you who haven't volunteered for anything will consider it in the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jen. I want to say it is an important opportunity to bring some of the conversations that we're having, like in a much more thoughtful way, to a larger group, but also to have that conversation with, I think in the past, board members and members of the administration have been invited. It's usually funded, if it's funded out of the system, by the system provost office. So this is an event that really allows us to do what we have to, what we're designed to do. Sorry, Rob, I missed what you were saying. Okay.
I think Rob is volunteering. I hope you can't hear him, so I'm going to volunteer him.
Rob is doing the opposite. He's skipping out on it.
Sorry, I have somebody coming in. I have to go. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
We were about to volunteer you for the committee.
I will say that when I worked with Dr. Owoye to set up the FAC conference when it was canceled because of COVID, yeah. We worked so hard. It was a wonderful experience, but man, it was frustrating to lose all of that and just go poof. That's not an explanation for what I'm not doing now, but it's just to say it's a great experience. Dr. Owoye and I worked well together and we had a great time, but it blew up in our face. Gotta go. Sorry.
See ya. All right. Lois and I will hit you up via email. And
okay.
Get into it. And if we don't want to do it, I guess we won't do it. I feel like there was something else I was supposed to be doing.
Well, the other last item is a discussion of that meeting yesterday on the shared governance or governance and elections at the community colleges. I was there. Ron, you were there. It was an interesting discussion. I'm going to defer to Ron on this one. It was held at Central, And so I was able to go because, I had to go in for my class a little bit after that. And it gave me an opportunity to go see the new construction in our School of Education building. It was quite a nice classroom. I was taken aback to some extent by the dynamics that was going on there. There were a dozen people present. I don't know, Ron, do you have any idea how many people were there online?
I know that there was at least one person for for each of the 12 community colleges. So, Naugatuck Valley, my college had three. We had three present, but every college had at least one
Okay.
shared governance leader present.
All right, well, that's important actually, because I mean, they were basically announcing the call for nominations to the somewhat modified structure for the next day.
Yeah, I mean, we thought we were going there to negotiate uh, a uh, a role for local shared governance. They had put forward the provost had put forward a position a proposal, okay, or plan for a shared governance system for the Connecticut State Community College. And it did not include any role whatsoever for local shared governance. So curriculum committees, faculty senates, and so on. No role whatsoever. And instead, what it had was statewide discipline committees and statewide schools and a curriculum congress with 33 people on it and a faculty senate with 40 something people on it. And it really was it really left the colleges hollowed out in terms of our ability to talk across disciplines and talk across programs and come up with and sort of discuss our students, have any sort of forum where we could discuss any academic issues whatsoever. And so I had drafted an alternative plan to that, and I had shared it with the colleges, and six out of the 12 colleges voted to support that alternative plan. And out of that alternative plan, we also passed a resolution that came out of Gateway to support that plan and to reject the idea that that there was no role for local shared governance at the colleges. And so we were in the process of putting together an email to send to President Maduco. Our former FAC member Fran Cohn was drafting the email, and right before he was about to send it, like within the hour that he was about to send the email to Dr. Maduco, the shared governance leaders got an invitation to a meeting with Maduco and the provost. And so we went to that meeting on Wednesday, and basically the provost, it became very clear to us, despite the President Maduco's claims that everyone was there to listen and that they just wanted to hear what we had to say and they wanted to include us in the process. It became fairly clear that the provost's idea for the meeting was to simply get us on board with her plan. But to the credit of the people who were there, we kept bringing her back to the issue of shared governance, and we kept looking for a space where shared governance could be. And she finally admitted that maybe we could squeeze it in weeks 2 and 3. We could have them provide feedback, our local shared governance bodies. And at that point, Maduco was talking about building trust, and I said, if you really want to build trust, I said, actually put it in your documents. Don't just tell us that you support this. I said, I want to see in your documents. And so when the documents came out today, they actually did include what she called an optional, because she said some colleges don't want to have local shared governance, which I find bizarre, but maybe that is the case. Okay, but she made it optional, but she did put it in there as a possibility, which allows us to go back to our CEO and say, listen, you need to provide compensation for people serving on these local bodies, because she was starting to cut off compensation for it, thinking that they had no role anymore. So why should she be paying them with ARs or whatever compensation people got? And so essentially, we did get that. Now there's still massive problems with this proposal. Besides the fact that there's 4 or 5 different layers that curriculum has to get through before it goes to the board, or before it goes to the administration. The fact that the provost expects all of this process, all of the curriculum approvals, to take 4 weeks, which I've sat on our curriculum committee, and I sit currently in our faculty senate, and I know that that you're lucky to get it through one committee in 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks, let alone get it past 4 or 5 different committees in 4 weeks. She has each body taking up the curriculum at one meeting in 1 week, and then passing it and moving it to the next committee the following week, and so that in 4 weeks she can pass everything. Now the reason for this is she says that there are still many programs that have not been aligned and are not ready, will not be in the catalog come fall. Which means that there will be students who are currently in those programs that will not be in a program starting next fall, unless these programs are approved. And so she says the timeline is dictated by the number of programs that need to be approved. That is definitely backwards to the way faculty work. Faculty work deliberatively, okay, and carefully to ensure that whatever gets approved works for the students, works for employers, works for the state universities and other transfer schools. We don't do this based upon an artificial deadline of 4 weeks. So I'm not sure how this is actually going to work. I'm very, very skeptical that this will work. I'm also skeptical about what happens if it doesn't, that if these committees do not approve it in the 4-week timeline, what are they going to, similarly to the college success course, are they going to skip over faculty and just go directly to the board and say faculty have failed here and we need these programs approved for fall? I don't know. I'm very, very skeptical about this plan. However, I am pleased that we were able to get some limited role for our local shared governance bodies in the feedback loop. So it was a minor achievement, but it was an achievement nonetheless.
Thanks, Ron. Colina?
So I should know this. I apologize for asking this, but so the role for local shared governance, is it the existing shared governance or is it a different?
It's the existing shared governance.
Okay. And then to what extent do these bodies get filled by a process that goes through existing shared governance?
That's the other problem that I failed to mention, Kalina. And I should take a step back. It's either the current local shared governance, or if a college wants to create something else, they're free to do it. The provost doesn't really care whatsoever about local shared governance. That's why she made it optional. So if we want to have that, we can have it. It's up to us to do whatever we want. So there was really not much interest there. Okay, but the reason and because there was no real interest in what local shared governance would do and its significance to this process. Okay, they have made nominations for serving on the statewide bodies as well as the statewide bodies. They've made the nomination process self nominating through an email link, and they have bypassed local shared governance in terms of the nomination process. And so that gives faculty at our colleges no control over who our nominees are. It also doesn't give us any control over how many nominees we might have. If we have many nominees, we may end up splitting our vote to the point where none of our nominees get elected. And so it's really a chaotic nomination process.
It is interesting to have had that conversation with shared governance leaders when technically shared governance leaders had no role in filling these bodies. I mean, it did accomplish something. It allowed you all to save the existence of the local stuff. But it's a strange process to me. I would have thought it would go through you. Sorry. Lois.
I'm going to have to guess here that, not even guess, assume that the reason why they have no interest in what happens on local shared governance is the local shared governance, as far as they're concerned, are going to be totally irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, they see us as just another feedback, so the discipline, I think in the final plan that came out today, that the discipline councils or the different groups that propose curriculum would fly it back it would send it to the local shared governance in addition to the department chairs and that kind of thing. And then they would receive feedback, but they would have to get feedback. You'd basically have one meeting to create feedback to send it back, and you'd have to do it within a week.
Sounds pretty much like total chaos to me.
Yeah, it's basically like what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, where they've given us, right, even with the endorsement process for the aligned programs, right, they've given us 40 or 60 programs at a time and told us you have 3 weeks to approve this stuff. Well, now they're going to give us 1 week to give recommendations or to give feedback on and actually the actual approving groups only get 1 week to consider curriculum. I can't possibly imagine faculty groups abiding by those 1 week deadlines, and I don't know what the provost is going to do when they don't abide by those deadlines.
They're going to move forward and do whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what they've been doing. Which is what they've been doing for years.
Exactly, Lois. Exactly, Lois. But it will be. I think the PR problem that the college success course will be magnified 1,000 times if they start doing that with programs.
Well, but the college success course is still there, and they still
I know.
They still have that justification up there.
I'm saying that the outrage that they have faced from faculty over that college success course will be magnified, and what that means in terms of the future, I have no idea. But I mean, it's one thing for the BOR to create a course; it's another thing for the BOR to create dozens of programs.
I don't know. That course is and their justification is still there, even though we
it's an abomination. Lois, it's an abomination. It is.
Ron, can you send along to us the most recent documents you got today? Because the ones that I have are obviously obsolete since they were from yesterday.
Sure, I think we all got them. Although that's the other thing, they all went to the other category. Our email has a focused area and then it has an other area. This all, at least in my email, went to the other area, and that's where all my junk mail goes. So I'm wondering how many faculty even have seen this thing, and if they've seen it, whether or not they're willing to open the 3 or 4 files, attachments, and read through dozens of pages of information that doesn't quite add up and doesn't quite make sense. But yeah, I'll send it to you right now, David.
My impression from having it.
FAC, David, like when Ron started talking, I forwarded it to everyone, so you should.
Oh, you did.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary Beth.
I'm just going to comment. Working at a small school with a very small amount of full-time faculty, and increasingly faculty that have hired recently don't even have any ARs. It is going to be a challenge for, as Nantuck specifically, to get people to serve on all of these. Like there's like the discipline councils, and then the school, curriculum councils, and the college senate. I mean, I missed our faculty council meeting today because I was at FAC, but I imagine that was an interesting discussion because like just going through, like when I write on a piece of paper, like who I think could fill some of these roles, there's more roles than we have people. And I can't imagine there's gonna be a lot of people who wanna do more than one of these things. So it'll be interesting to see what's gonna happen for the small schools and how that will affect our representation. So just, you know, something to add.
Keep in mind, Mary Beth, that on the Curriculum Congress and the Senate, not every college is going to have a voting member, and it's more than likely the small colleges that will not have voting members because of name recognition. I mean, I can, you know, if I ran for one of these large, the two large bodies, right, my name recognition at my college, I'd have 300 people voting for me, right, where you might have 50 people voting for you, right? So yeah, so that's you're at a structural disadvantage when it comes to running for one of the large bodies. Of course, I don't know how you get 33 faculty to agree on anything related to curriculum. I've never seen it before. It sounds like it's going to be the United States Senate. Although United States Senate has passed a couple of laws recently, so you know.
My impression, this was like the first meeting that I had ever attended specifically on community college governance. And, I had followed some of the plans that existed before. And what struck me at the meeting was there was, the old plan, which I presume your provost had participated in drafting, and then there were modifications to that plan, which had been introduced subsequent to the discussions when the new administration, if I can put it that way, of Terrence Chang and the new CSCC president, Dr. Maduko, and so forth, when they came in. So there seemed to be some sort of a delicate balance, if I can put it politely, between the old and some new modifications, which included renaming the department discipline councils or curriculum bodies as schools, right? Because departments were being restored on the basis of discussion and negotiation with the unions. There were still some unusual parts to this, and one of them is that the Curriculum Congress doesn't report to the college senate, and that's a curious arrangement. Certainly at the universities, our curriculum committees are committees of the Senate, and they report to the Senate because there are certain checks and balances that can be introduced by a further discussion at the level of the Senate. That was one thing that I noticed. There certainly, I'm not quite sure what is the difference between the statewide discipline council and the school area curriculum committee. Do you know?
Well, the disciplines, there are, I believe, 29 disciplines, and there's only 6 schools. So the schools are it's almost like a college, right? You're at a university, so you have the college of, right, and within that college you have disciplines. So it's but I mean the fact that you've got to go through all these different layers. Again, I don't know how this system produces anything. It's a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah. Well, I think the other remarkable aspect of it was the flow chart of everything getting done sort of lockstep, and there's no time for, a second discussion or something coming back for revision or review. That strikes me as quite utopian.
It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. It's impractical, and it's not even feasible. I mean, I again, that's why I'm saying it's not going to go as planned. And when it doesn't go as planned, Lois and I both suspect that authoritarianism will raise its head at that point. I don't, again, I don't know that for sure. I'm not exactly sure what will happen. But when faculty fail to meet that deadline, and the college faces the prospect of having students currently enrolled in programs without a program come September. I mean, why would the students stay enrolled if they were no longer in a program? Now, this is all a problem because they refuse to do teach outs. as required by accreditation. They're not doing teach outs. They're just moving people from one program to another program, which is
Mary Beth?
which is also unethical. But anyway,
Mary Beth?
I was just going to say one thing that I think will be interesting, because I've heard this several times at these various meetings and webinars, is once people are filling all of these positions, how much autonomy these groups will have to make changes to their own structure of how things are going to work, right? So I've heard the comment made that, well, once the college senate is up and running, then the college senate can make decisions on certain things. And so it'll be interesting to see whether that comes to pass, whether the college senate can then say, you know, this timeline isn't going to work for us. And so as a result, we're going to change this timeline. And like you said, whether that will be an authoritarian no, or, you know, well, you established this body and now you have to live with what this body decides to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out. And maybe there's some hope for, once that's established, some more faculty control, but I mean, that might not be real.
I addressed that with Meduco on Wednesday at the meeting, Mary Beth, and I told him, because they kept saying, well, that we can make changes, they can make changes. And I said, you know, when people are elected through a system and they are serving within the system they chose to serve in and that they chose to be elected in, okay, they tend to favor the status quo that got them in the position that they are currently in. So I'm not sure how much they will change things. I mean, obviously, if something is unfeasible, if something is not feasible, such as the timeline, as you said, they're going to have to change it. But I don't see people wanting to make a lot of changes if the system itself benefited them in putting them into those positions.
Lois?
That's a good point.
We've seen this firsthand. If you're not doing something the way they want you to do it or saying what they want you to say, they get rid of you. We've seen it. We've seen it for years now. That's what they've done. So what would make them change?
The only thing I can think of, Lois, is that Meduco seems like he wants to be here for a long time. He's not like a David Levinson who's just here for, you know, to fill a space so he can pad his pension. Okay. I think he wants to be here long term, and I don't think he wants to be here and oversee a completely dysfunctional mess of a system. Which is what he has right now, but I do think that he wants to make this work because you know, I mean, he moved his whole family here from Minnesota. So
Actions speak louder than words, and
well, no, I agree, but I do think he has an incentive. He has a personal incentive to make this work. Now, whether or not he can, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's humanly possible to make this work.
I mean, what we can say are a couple of things. Ron, I tend to agree with you. That was my impression in listening to him and in interacting with him at the end. And I think it's important for folks at the community college level to continue a discussion with him. Some of the charts in the document that they submitted on Wednesday should be updated. And I note that what they say here on one of them on page 2 is the governance model should be reviewed initially upon 2 full years of operation, and then at least every 5 years by the CT State Senate and the CT State President. You may want to, you know, reduce that initial 2-year review to 1 year.
No, well, she reduced at the meeting on Wednesday. She said it was 18 months, David.
Okay. All right. And so we'll continue to look into this as an item from time to time on the FAC agenda. If there are not any further comments on this one, it's an important issue. And I understand now that the nomination process has begun now and that elections will be held for the Senate and I take it for the curriculum body between now and December 23rd, right?
That's right.
So that is a very short timetable, especially at the end of term.
Well, it's a time period in which faculty really are not focused on that. We're focused on, we're basically only focused on our teaching at this point.
Yeah, and the exam schedules. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Well, I think with that, is there any other business? We will return and we will continue to follow this very closely. Thank you, Ron, for your presentation. That was very clear.
Thank you.
If there are no further items for other business, our next meeting is in January. I've now forgotten the exact date, but it's on the BOR calendar. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mike Shea? Those who wish to stay on forever? I will stop the recording now. The meeting is adjourned at 3:30 on the dot.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.